Thank you very much, and a very good morning to everyone, and apologies for being late. This is 16 Days of Activism, and there's so many other things that we are doing, but I made a commitment to come here, and I'm here. And I just wanted to acknowledge, before I go on, the work of the former Minister for Women, Ms. Meresaini Rakwita, and how her leadership has brought us here today. I really want to acknowledge her, and I'd like us to give her a round of applause from here. Being able to bring civil society and government together and really working to ensure that civil society input was essential and was there. And having said that, I also want to thank the media during these 16 days of activism. You've been extremely good, actually, and particularly Fijivillage, Fiji Times, FBC TV, and FBC News, and MTV1. So thank you very much for that. And that is how I think we can work well together. Thank you very much for that. So I'll just start with some stats, present stats. As I think we all in the room know, and I'm sure the Minister has mentioned, that we have very high rates of violence in this country. We're talking about violence against women and girls, we're talking about domestic violence, we're talking about rape, we're talking about child rape, we're talking about sexual harassment, and all the discrimination, the lack of services and things that come with it. This year alone, till November, we have seen in excess of 8,000, we have received 8,000 calls till end of November. And about 73% of that is for domestic violence, the rest are for rape, child rape, sexual harassment, and so on. So, impact of all this violence on women. Women's health is impacted greatly. Physical, sexual, and mental health, pregnancies, suicides, murders, infanticide, unwanted pregnancies, forced pregnancies, suicides, murders, infanticide, injuries, many injuries, various injuries, and often permanent injuries. Rape and domestic violence, marital rape, and so on also makes women and girls very susceptible to sexually transmitted infections as well as HIV/AIDS. Also, we have seen in the National Survey of 2011, Somebody's Life, Everybody's Business, shows that many of our social problems come from what happens to women and girls and children, and particularly in our homes. Children who witness abuse, the impact on them. And the survey also shows that children are at a high risk of not completing their education if they are witnessing that abuse or living in a home where there is a lot of abuse. And if they have been raped, a lot of the rape, as you know, our data at the Crisis Center, we've been talking about this for the last month or so, that about 96% of the rape cases reported to us, of the 96%, 96% are known to the survivor. Very few strangers are raping our children, our women, and our girls. Of that 96%, about 76% are from our own homes, relatives, and very close relatives who are committing this in our own homes. So that should put a lot of fear in us that our own homes are not safe for many women, girls, and children. Children watching and witnessing abuse also are at a higher risk of perpetrating. And girls watching this are at a higher risk of experiencing the violence as adult women. Not all girls and boys who witness, who experience violence will grow up to be perpetrators, but the risk is a lot higher. A lot of our social problems through rape, child rape, and so on, and violence come from our homes, come from this. For example, I mentioned this before, prostitution, drugs, criminal activities, unemployment, teenage pregnancies that we talk about all the time. We have got high rates of teenage pregnancies, And we have to ask the question, how are our girls getting pregnant? Who is impregnating them? An 11-year-old, 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, who is impregnating them? So then we look at the cost of violence. Costing the violence in dollar terms. This is what usually makes people wake up when they hear the dollar, when they hear about the dollars that we spend on this, on prevention and response work. We did a survey on intimate partner violence in 1998, 99. Not quite the standard that the second one was done, but it did give us results. And that did show us about 70% of women were survivors of domestic violence. At that time, the Reserve Bank the governor of the Reserve Bank, Mr. Savanala Narume, we got him with the Ministry for Women at that time in 2002. We did 16 days of activism together, and we got him and his staff to do a costing with the survey done in 1999. And he estimated that Fiji spent, that's in 2002, spent between $300 to $500 million a year in response and prevention work on all forms of violence against women, girls, and children. Recently, with the 2011 survey, Somebody's Life, Everybody's Business, Professor Biman Prasad, when he was at the university, his estimate is that we are actually spending in excess of $700 million in response and prevention work so far. And this means police, judiciary, drafting new laws, enacting new laws, then implementing them, health services, shelters, funding from donor partners for organizations like the Crisis Center, and so on. So when you put all of that together, court costs and so on, that's what we are looking at. And I think there is a survey at the moment in a work in progress, so we'll see how that goes. I don't think it will be anything less than that. If not, if you do a thorough survey, then I think we'll see a lot more. So it impacts, the most important people are the women that it impacts, the women, the children, the families, and so on. But we also have to look at the dollar signs, because that is what makes people wake up and do something about it. So that is the impact. I think the second part of what I'm supposed to do, according to my notes, was that looking at the media. I must say, in my 37 years of this work, we have advocated and lobbied the media. We have seen a lot of changes, improvements, slightly better reporting, but there are also the challenges still remain. The sexism, the misogyny that is still there, and often people do it without realizing the harm it does, that it contributes to violence against women and girls. Reinforcing women's roles, cooking, cleaning, showing all those things, talking about those things, the jokes, especially the radio hosts, the sexist jokes. I still get shocked if I'm in the car and I'm listening to the radio and I hear the sexism in the jokes and so on, and really verging on misogyny. I think that still remains. I also, I just wanted to point out that one of the things that we recommend, and I'm sure we'll have more talk when we're doing the consultation with the media personnel, that we have always said a year or two ago, some of you are present here, we had a consultation, Nadine is here also, some of the CSOs who are working in this area with media editors and so on, about what we can do and how we can get a dialogue and how we can move forward. And we still haven't done it with COVID and everything else, but a comprehensive gender, violence against women, and human rights training tailored for the media. And that is really so important. Every time that we do, we read articles or we do interviews, it's like a new thing altogether. There is often no past history that people can remember. And I do know that the media is in strife and there's a huge turnover in media personnel, but I think these things can be done. And we are the experts here. We can provide the training and so on. The data that we have that is so important. The Crisis Center has very comprehensive data. We keep data very, very well. And of course with the 1560 line, the toll-free line, we also have a lot of data there, and some other organizations that are collecting data, but we have that. Recently, this whole NAP, the National Action for the Prevention of All Forms of Violence Against Women and Girls, it recognizes patriarchy based on global evidence, and what we are seeing here, regional evidence, national evidence, that patriarchy is the root cause of that. Then if we have a media outlet and a senior editor writing about it's not patriarchy, it's mental health issues. When we write about these things, we do a lot, and when we are passing the wrong messages when we do that. And when we negate the global evidence that is there, and at that level, it does a lot of harm to the work, because there are many, many perpetrators out there. There are many, many men who sexually harass, potential rapists and so on. There are many men also who are very good, I'll say that, who don't rape, who don't beat up their wives, and so on. And who are just waiting for those kind of messages that they see. And we're on social media now, what we say there, and particularly leaders, what we say, it really matters and how it is reported. It matters because it encourages potential perpetrators and people who have the intention, or people who are already doing these kind of things to women, girls, and children. So I'll leave that there, and again, I would like to repeat that comprehensive training on gender, violence against women, and human rights, and also other things that are related. Violence against women doesn't happen on its own in isolation. It's all intertwined with patriarchy, with gender inequality, with sexism, with misogyny, and so on.